All right, let's start with this. A couple of pieces of news. The first is a sad one. News has come out that Todd Gurley may not ever be a bell cow feature running back again. I hate to see something like this so early in the offseason, to have to lay someone to rest for whom so much of our hearts bled. Dearest Todd, your burst, your effervescent athleticism was something that, scampering through the hole, simply made my heart sing.
Your ability to run angle routes against overmatched linebackers in space, your ability to get through 6-foot holes despite a bone-on-bone situation
was tremendous. We will forever miss you. We wish you the best upstairs with the big guy. People forget that Jesus was one of the first to establish the run.
That's true. Now, the next eulogy is, of course, for the cap space that his contract will have eaten up.
Sorry, we've already moved on to Darrell Henderson. So the other story is a Le'Veon Bell story. Did you hear this one?
I didn't.
So Le'Veon Bell went out to work out, it appears, and came back to his house, and two women had apparently raided his closet and left with lots of jewelry. Now, the story starts with this, and then in the next paragraph mentions that the two women were, quote, Le'Veon Bell's girlfriends, end quote. Your thoughts?
Are they now girlfriends with each other? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just asking, like, did they team up in more ways than one?
I have a lot of questions, right? Did they both happen to show up at the house, get angry, then bond, and then rob him? Or were they like, does he just live in like a, not R. Kelly situation, but like got multiple girlfriends living in the crib, and two of them, so it was like there's 6 of them, but 2 of them were like, screw this, robbed him and pieced out. Here's the sad thing. They're taking advantage of his patience.
Jeez. I had a friend in college who had a separate phone for his 2 different girlfriends. One lived on the Fargo side, one lived on the Moorhead side.
You're kidding me.
And so he said the town was just big enough to be able to, have that set up. What if Bell's house is big enough for like, this is my left wing of the house girlfriend.
Interesting.
This is my right wing of the house girlfriend. And somehow one of them ventured into the common area, the neutral zone, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I would have expected him to have a little better security of the rock, the diamonds. Like, you don't just put them in your closet, right? You gotta keep that high and tight.
You have to have a space. If you're going to run that lifestyle, you have to have a space.
Plural. You've got to be prepared for worse. Like, come on, man. So we hate to see it.
Planning and prediction has not always been a great thing for Le'Veon Bell, though, as last year would attest.
True. All right, we're going to move on to some mean tweets. I think it's safe to say that pretty much every non-rational Bears fan hates us. Trevor Hembro, quote, PFF Data Scientist, end quote, is the new PC translation of 40-year-old virgins. You have children.
I have children somehow.
I don't, so maybe I'm the virgin.
Yeah, but you're not 40 yet. You're only 28.
True, but
29.
Some people close to me would argue that I'm really far older than my age would
indicate. An old soul.
Yeah. My girlfriend has told me repeatedly that I've been turning 30 for the past 5 years, so that this really hits close to home. Thanks, Trev.
What about Robbins 2324, referring to you, I think? Unless an emergency happens, get off your phone. You are on air and shouldn't be on the phone. You have computers. Do the research in front of you.
Yes, as you know, I check my phone often to get the latest breaking research. Oh man,
it's like my mother-in-law.
Yeah, my favorite. So sometimes my mom listens to this podcast, so she may be listening now. In which case, she'll probably get angry when I say this. But she was a huge proponent of no phones at like the dinner table. But that was back when the phones that like I had as a kid, like the one game was like Snake, right? Now she has a phone and like you can do everything on your phone, right? So she's the one that's on the phone more often now at the dinner table.
You hate to see it.
Love you, Mom. All right. Bill Zimmerman at Zimmerman SXM. Don't want to know what that stands for. You honestly think your grades are analytical? That's like saying an English teacher grading an essay is analytical.
Yeah, this gets to like the Joe Banner discussion we had a few weeks ago. This person actually like apparently hosts a Bears fan podcast, which again, you
stunned.
Sometimes, so like a lot of these sites have good content and everything, yes. Right? And like there are fans of there are people that sort of do both who end up having good analysis. I think Seahawks Twitter does a pretty good job. Vikings are okay, but like you do have to understand when you position yourselves as I have the fifth best Bears podcast in the market. It's like there's no objectivity there, right? So you sort of have to be a little careful. But this person, very much says, thinking like the original tweet was PFF grades are an opinion. Okay, so and then he goes ahead and compares it to an English teacher grading one essay. Well, first off, good English teachers have a rubric that they grade things on.
Yes.
Right, and that rubric is sort of
ever heard of advanced placement tests?
It applies a value system, certainly, and our grades do apply a value system to what we think is good. So there is some opinion there. But as I tweeted back to this person, that's not what this is. This would be like you taking 1,000 classes in high school and then looking at your GPA, right? There is opinion embedded in all of those data points, but the collection of it actually has some value and is predictive. So yeah, while
I would welcome him to create his own opinions, put them down into a spreadsheet, if you will, since that's probably the limit of his analytical capability, and then see if they're predictive and stable, and then get back to me.
Exactly. So it's not about the subjectivity. It's about, do these things actually predict things better than other things? And this is just an upset Bears fan masquerading as a.
The Ghost of Judah Tribe. I don't even know what that means. Referring to Trubisky, top 5 quarterback. Shut the F up. Thanks. And then Anthony Slazis says, you're idiots. Mitch is going to take a huge steps forward.
We actually said that he could improve on the video, but
I think it's hard not to be. I think it would be hard for him to repeat with the highest rate of negatively graded throws this year. And so I think he will improve. And as I mentioned, the other parts of the team that we expect to regress will regress. So thanks, Anthony. I'm glad you listened.
What about Jim Lander? You guys are growing on me. Gotta admit, I was a hater at first, but you guys have gotten much better chemistry.
Oh, nice.
There's an invisible beaker right here in the middle.
Then the last one here is Dale Johnson said, I can't believe I'm listening to Ben Roethlisberger's cousin talk to me about Mitch Trubisky. Get off my screen, loser. Wow. Fire and fury.
I didn't know Roethlisberger had,
burner
fit cousins.
I always like to throw you a little curveball there.
My hair is pretty Roethlisbergerian, right? Yeah, right today.
Oh man! Although you cleaned up the facial hair, which we should have a vote, because I think facial hair is a good look for you.
We'll see. I mean,
Matt agrees. I obviously agree. So all right. Let's go to Saints Falcons. This was week 3, and I don't know what your process is for watching these games. I think it's cool to come and compare the two, but I'm assuming that you went back and thought about both these teams going into this game, and you look back at the way their 2 seasons started, and I think we assume, because the Saints should have made it to the Super Bowl, that this wasn't as big of a game for the Saints as it was for the Falcons. The Falcons obviously lose week 1 to Philly in sort of heartbreaking fashion. They then come back and get a win in week 2 that was a little more convincing. I think they won 31-17 over Carolina, I believe.
I think they beat the Carolina by 7, but it was like a late touchdown or something weird, yeah.
But the Saints get their doors blown off by the Bucs week 1. And then remember that Browns game where it was like they should have lost that game. It was a disaster. So like the Saints come into this game almost 0-2.
Yeah.
And when I watched the game, remembering that, it made sense. The Saints played as if this was much more of a must-win game, in my opinion, than the Falcons.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like they were, pretty efficient offensively. They did, they went for it, right? They went for it they went for it on fourth down late in the game a couple times. They blocked a punt. They did all these things that I think a desperate team does. Whereas the Falcons, weirdly, like they had some big plays. Namely, Calvin Ridley had a terrific game, but they did not play desperately. They didn't, and they had a lot of injuries on their defense. But there were a lot of things that I think the Falcons left on the field in this game.
Yeah, so let's dive into the game a little bit. It ends up being a really high-scoring game. So knowing that, the way that the game starts is interesting. And the Saints come out, they score a touchdown on the opening drive. Then there are a couple of punts, and then the Falcons start to put a few things together. They're running on first and second down seemingly every drive, but they get a couple of third down conversions. They get a Ridley touchdown, and you go into the second quarter, you go into halftime, and to me, it's like the Falcons are just sort of being given this opportunity. The Saints are not playing well, and the Falcons have not grabbed the opportunity that's there. The Saints made a couple of really interesting decisions in this first half that I thought were super weird. They had a 4th and goal at the 2, and they kick. They had another. I think it was a 4th and
1 punt.
Yeah, 4th and 1 punt. They had a 4th and 4 at the 30 and kicked a field goal. So to me, there were opportunities there for the Saints to really take grasp of this game in the first half, and they didn't.
Yeah, I wrote here, it was like, the Falcons' first 2 drives that you had, bootleg, throwaway, second down run, penalty, drink.
Yep.
Second and 20 run, right? And they gave themselves no chance on the first drive after the Saints drove down and scored pretty convincingly. But then, after the Ridley touchdown, the Saints get the ball back, and I wrote, and I have in my notes here, nickeling diming the Falcons until some Taysom Hill BS, and then a punt, right? So he was sort of this human rain delay to the drive basically early in that season. And again, it just gave the Falcons an opportunity, maybe that they didn't necessarily need to have.
Well, to me, this game for the Falcons was sort of lost at the end of the first half. And at the beginning of the first half, as you said, their first 2 drives, they have second and long runs. They managed to get a touchdown on that long Ridley play on one of those and have 2 third and long conversions on that drive, which goes to back up the idea that that running on second and long is smart. But there's like a 6-point swing at the end of the second quarter, which is just really heartbreaking if you're watching this as a Falcons fan. The Saints should be scoring every drive because the linebackers for the Falcons couldn't cover.
Not to mention Brian Poole can't cover.
Exactly.
Michael Thomas.
Couldn't cover Michael Thomas to save his life. So it's 13 to 14 Falcons after another Ridley bomb, and the Saints punt, and then the Falcons get it back with about 30 left, and this is that opportunity, right? So I think it's always, people talk about the Patriots' ability to kind of close out halves and then get the ball back in the second half. And really what it is simple math. You want more drives than the other team. So the Falcons have this chance to even up the number of drives in the first half despite the Saints starting with the ball, which is what you want. They run 2 straight times because, of course.
Why wouldn't you?
And then, as if they want to make sure that there's no clock left, put themselves in a third down, and then end up going 3 and out with an incompletion, kick the ball back, and New Orleans gets it at the 45 and gets a field goal.
Yeah, I mean, there was, and that not only those 3 points, but they also got unlucky when, in the field goal, I believe it was off one of the uprights and in, right? So like they should have been up 14-10 really, and then they ended up the half down to 14-16. But again, this was one of those where they really did not. It didn't seem like they understood the situation that they were in, right? You're against a team that kind of beat your brakes off in the first half, and you're up by 1. The point is not to sit on this, because if you sit on this, like, things are going to catch up to you. That you have to bury the Saints here. And at the end of the first, I mean, the number of times they ran Coleman was just unreal in this game, and the lack of success they had in that realm. It was just. It was something to behold, certainly, given how great Matt Ryan was in this game.
I wrote, I hate outside zone. I hate first down runs. I hate second down runs, each at least 3 times while watching this game. The Falcons' desire to run the ball on first and second down was utterly amazing, and it paid off for them. On first down runs, the Falcons averaged, wait for it, 0.8 yards per play.
You love to see it.
The Saints, 5.7. It just so happened that the Falcons obviously ran about 8% more frequently on first down, because when you're averaging 0.8, you've got to do it.
And so they get the ball at the start of the second half, right? They get a sack, they get a long run finally on the out.
Setting it up.
The abusive boyfriend comes back and gives you flowers, and then you had a pass to Sanu, and then you had the Ridley pass interference. They were certainly spooked by Ridley getting over the top of them, and then I thought Ryan's pass to Ridley for a touchdown in the left corner of the end zone, his moves in the pocket. I thought he was really great in terms of, like, it really did show how good Matt Ryan was going at the time. And then they get a punt.
They get Vic Beasley to make a play.
I know.
His one good play of the game, he goes absolutely ballistic. They force a punt, get the ball back, and this was, and what I wrote in my notes was, this was the moment. The Falcons are back. They've got the ball. They have a lead. They have a chance to press the advantage. And what happens is exactly what you'd expect to happen.
Yeah, so they open and empty. They're going to get aggressive here.
Yep.
Ryan runs for a gain. Then they go Ridley run on a kind of a reverse, and then Sanu drops the ball. It's sort of tipped at the line of scrimmage and everything. So they go through, and then of course the most Falconians thing to have happen is the long snapper throws a 12-6 curveball to the punter, and it gets blocked.
I wrote here on this drive, outside zone on 2nd and 2, because you have to move backwards in order to move forwards. The play at one point is 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I think that was the Ridley one. I just wrote outside zone because I was so angry. But it's like the guy is at one point 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You need to gain 2 yards. I have no problem with running on this play. Just for the love of God, do not move backwards 8 yards and then have to cover up that ground running with the ball. At least throw it if you're going to do that. Just so infuriating. They block the punt. Of course, New Orleans capitalizes as you would expect them to. New Orleans was a penalty disaster inside the 10, but it didn't matter because whenever they needed to, they had Michael Thomas in the slot or Alvin Kamara on the linebacker, and it was just guaranteed to pick up some yardage. It was really sort of amazing that the Saints targeted linebackers 17 times in this game.
Yeah.
9 yards per play. They targeted the safeties and linebackers together 30 times for 8.5 yards per play. They were just roasting the interior of that defense, predictably so, right? Like no Deion Jones, a huge loss for this team, especially against a team like the
Keanu
Saints.
Neal was out, and then you had DeMonte KZ. Also, their free safety Ricardo Allen was also injured. So, and then they get the ball back, right? And again, this is how good Matt Ryan was. They run first down, don't get many yards. They pass to Julio and Ridley to convert anyway, right?
The funniest thing was it was a first down run with a hold.
With a hold, right. and then the interesting thing is they put in Ito Smith, who is this like random running back, right? Yep. And he actually looks pretty spry, right? They sort of mix it up, running back who hasn't played a lot in that game, sort of changing the pace both in the passing game and the running game. Really wondered why. Okay, we're going to establish Coleman in this game. It's like for what end? And then they get the touchdown pass to Coleman.
Go for two
again. And this is like sort of the Falcons like pull you back in, because going for two is great. But there's really no difference between being up 4 and being up 5.
And the Saints,
the 6 is huge.
The Saints, just before I wrote this down, I was like, why did they not go for 2? Now I get that you're not expecting that to be the final margin, but still, like, why would you not want to have that 3-point advantage so that when you build on it, it's, a 2-score game like that? That didn't make a ton of sense to me. And then the Falcons, as you said, they pull you back in just after destroying your heart with outside zone that doesn't work. Come back to you. They're up 29 now to 23. So they've got this 6-point advantage. And this is where everything falls apart, because Taysom Hill ends up making Vic Beasley look like he's never played football before. Just roasts him for about 40 yards. They end up in a 4th and 1. And this is where Sean Payton is not going to make a mistake. He went for this 4th and 1. Obviously, they pick it up because it's 1 freaking yard and the Saints. And that puts it back, into a now 30-29 game for the Saints. And you figure, okay, look, the Falcons are going to have to find a way to score and not score as time expires, because if not, they're in real trouble.
Yeah, and they get a big play to Julio. They, run a couple times to Coleman. He gets stuffed. They get a sack. And then they get this. And I remember you messaging me like something like, we're never going to get a game right. And then the field goal.
But the Julio throw. So that's what pissed me off about this drive. The Julio throw was underthrown.
Yeah, it should have been. It should have been
a touchdown. And then they get. It's like, this is the Falcons, right?
Yeah.
Because then what happens is they end up in like 3rd and 1 and get a penalty, and it's like 4th and 15 or whatever. They're kicking a field goal, and there's a personal foul on the Saints.
Contact with the center.
So I literally had written down, like field goal. This is just a joke. I had forgotten what happened, and so the luck has turned. Maybe finally the luck has turned for the Falcons, because they end up getting the score and then going for 2 again.
Gives them a 7-point advantage, which is terrific. Saints get the ball back about 7 minutes, right? And one of the more masterful drives, right, that you've seen, right? Because they go, Thomas gets a big catch. He sets the NFL record for most catches in the first 3 games of a season. They go with Ted Ginn on a reverse. I thought, one of the things that really hurt the Saints down the stretch of the season was that they didn't have Ted Ginn. I think Ted Ginn's an effective player for them. Might even be so more now that they have a tight end on their team. Kamara just starts. I'm writing here. This Atlanta team is just getting gashed by Kamara all over the place.
It's a disaster, and yet they have
a 3rd down
they
opportunity.
Have so many chances here to make a play, and it was almost as if in the first half the Saints just gave them these plays, like they didn't care that much, and so it was like the Falcons had these chances, and then now in the second half, the Saints sort of realized, look, we need to make sure we execute on 3rd downs, and Vic Beasley goes like lunging at Taysom Hill as if he was a statue. He's not. He's actually moving. So Vic Beasley eats air. Taysom Hill picks up the 3rd and 1, and this was my favorite thing. The next play is a 1st down. Vic Beasley stops a run for like 1 yard and goes ballistic.
Yeah. But then later on in the drive, we had Breeze on a rolling left, broke a Brian Poole and Robert Alford basically run into each other, and Breeze gets a touchdown.
This is when we should have known.
And then, of course, with 1:15 left, the Falcons, don't do much.
Okay, so I want to talk about this touchdown here. So it was 37-30. The Saints score. It's 36-37. Saints are down by 1. You got about 1:15 left. Would you have gone for 2 if you're the Saints?
I think the first order analytical decision is yes. The second order is, of course, is if you're playing an offense as good as Atlanta, right? Do you entice them to try? Because that team, when trying this game, had your number, right? So it is interesting. I think 1:15 is enough time where I would be fine either way. Yeah. What do you think?
It's interesting because,
and you're not you are an underdog nominally, but at this point in time, yeah, you really aren't, right?
If with 1:15 left, so the idea being, of course, if you kick the PAT 37-37, if you go up by 1, now all of a sudden Atlanta has got to try and score. So they're going for it on 4th down as opposed to kicking it away. With 1:15, if they only run 3 downs and then, punt it away, you can still win the game in regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think that's where it pushes me over the edge to accepting what Sean Payton did as being a shrewd move here. And then when you should you then get to overtime, right, you've got this 50-50 chance of getting the ball and winning the game, basically.
Well, and my notes for overtime says tails never fails and the game is over.
Who are you more scared? So who would you be more scared of getting the ball first in overtime?
Oh, Saints.
Saints.
The Falcons. There's a huge collection of universes where the Falcons have the most brilliant drive in the world and score in like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. And
then there's a couple universes where Ryan throws the ball off of Tevin Coleman's hands and it gets picked off for 6 points by the Saints. Whereas I didn't see much of a chance that they were going to like struggle at all. Once the Saints got the ball, I thought it was curtains.
And even that said, there was a 3rd and 8 where they predictably Kamara attacks a linebacker. Safety. It was like Richards, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Gets exactly 8 because, of course. And then they have a 3rd and 5 again, and they isolate Michael Thomas on a linebacker, and so it's over. So there were chances there for the Falcons, but where they really lost this to me was, again, the 1st and 2nd down decisions to run the ball and average 0.8 yards per run was just absolutely disgusting. Atlanta, 6 second and long runs for a wonderful 2 yards per play. The Saints did it half as frequently and averaged the same number of yards per play. But you can't do that. You can't punt the ball away on 2nd down.
But the thing about the Saints as well is that they're actually an efficient running team, unlike Atlanta, which was like they were running to like establish
disaster.
Yeah, and so I actually don't mind them going ahead and running, mixing it in a little bit. Whereas the Falcons, they were like, okay, Devontae Freeman's hurt. This is Tevin Coleman's time. We're going to see if he's going to be the next running back for our team after he hits free agency. And it was just an egregious amount of inefficient football.
So coming out of this game, I think we were probably pretty accurate in what we thought about both teams, which is the Falcons are in real trouble because they cannot stop anybody. And the Saints are probably not as in trouble as maybe we thought.
Yeah, well, and right. And the Saints were a slow starter in 2017 as well. So, but they did really look, offensively, the Saints were really good in week 1, poor in week 2. It is interesting, right? Because I wonder, when we were first starting to analyze games together, we got off to a pretty good start in 2017. And maybe that was just noise, right? 2018, how much did we overreact to 2 games? Like the Falcons looked terrible week 1 against Philly. Yep. They looked really good despite all the injuries against Carolina. So we're sitting here saying, oh, Carolina's a good team. That we don't have anything to worry about with respect to the Falcons. Yep. They've got this thing figured out. They got everything ironed out.
The Saints have struggled.
But in reality, what were our priors? Our priors were, okay, the Falcons are a pretty good team, but not as good as the Saints. The Saints are going to be, a pretty good team. And in a game like that, the Falcons probably should only be favored by maybe minus 3, which they were. And us being overreacting maybe to the first 2 weeks, are like the Falcons minus 3, which might have been a mistake.
Agreed. Okay, any thoughts on next week's game? I kind of want to do a Patriots game.
Well, what if we killed 2 birds with 1 stone? Ooh. What if we did Patriots Bears?
I had Patriots Jags, Patriots Bears, and Patriots Chiefs as options.
Because that was a game that Trubisky, Trubisky actually was played from behind, right? So we got to see him in that realm, which we hardly saw.
Okay. Let's do Pats Bears then.
We do Pats Bears.
That's fine with me. We are very happy to welcome in all the way from Germany on the anniversary of D-Day, no less, Timo Riske, also known as PFF Moo. You have one of the best nicknames on Twitter. That's for darn sure. Welcome.
Yeah, well, hi. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be on your podcast and on your team. Let's go.
What time is it in Germany? A lot of people out there struggle with the time difference. So let's level set here. We're doing this at 11 a.m. It's what over there for you?
It's 5 p.m. currently.
So just know that Timo's always ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Tell your family thank you for allowing us to take you from dinner this one time. I know that can be a struggle.
For some people more than others. We are pumped to have you on the team. You are going to be contributing in a sort of consulting role, but whatever we can get, we will take. So we're going to do a few icebreakers as we did with Kevin last week. And let's start with this one because I am I lived in Germany once. A long time ago. And so I'm curious your response to this question. If you could eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think I'm going to cheat here and say the obvious answer is bread.
Okay.
Because I can put on it whatever I want. So
no,
I can
that
actually eat
that is cheating.
anything.
You'd have to eat plain bread. Unless you pick one topping. In which case I'll let you pick that one topping.
Then in this case, bread is not the answer.
Okay. So, do you have a backup, or are you starving for the rest of your life?
I think pasta.
Okay, but I'm not going to let you get off that easy. What kind of pasta? Yeah, pick a sauce or a topping.
Bolognese.
Okay. Now, I was not expecting that. Do you find that the pasta in Germany is very good?
If you go to an Italian restaurant, it is.
Okay. All right.
He did highlight. So American bread is like notoriously awful.
True.
Right. So
This
like relative to European, like when I've gone to Europe and had bread, like I do, that answer doesn't surprise me. But if you come over to America here and you have the bread, I think you'll be underwhelmed.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually when someone leaves Germany for an extended period of time, the first thing that you miss is German bread. Definitely, because we eat it every morning, and if you're in another country and they have this weird stuff which isn't really bread, then it's not like you're used to do.
Mm-hmm. I was expecting, so my takeaways from having lived in Germany and having gone back a few times is that the soup there is on a different planet, and I can think of like 5 or 6 different soups that I could probably eat for an extended period of time without going crazy. And the second thing is that the sausages, not Eckrich, but are pretty darn great. So I'm surprised.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both. I think these are good answers too. Yeah,
thank God.
Definitely.
If I had failed the German part of the podcast, I'd be in trouble. All right. Non-football related podcast or TV show that you most regularly listen to or watch?
Actually, I'm not much of a podcast guy. I have started to listen to some football podcasts, mostly when commuting to work. For instance, this one, which is a great one.
Of course.
And actually, I'm also not much of a TV watcher. My wife isn't also. So actually, when I watch TV, it's usually sports. And when it's not football, it's usually soccer.
Okay. And what is your, obviously, the German national team, but if you had to pick a specific team in Germany, who would it be?
It's Borussia Dortmund.
Oh, okay. I was a Bayern fan when I lived there. What about you, Eric?
While I cannot relate at all to the soccer fandom, I can relate back when I was going to graduate school. I can relate to having a TV for which like 1 or 2 channels worked and not watching really any TV. So bless you in that regard.
All right, we'll pivot back to food and drink here for a second. Last week's podcast, I said that beer was very overrated, and I was excluding German beer. So what is the best German beer?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think it's hard to put a name on it. I mean, it's definitely not what they serve at Oktoberfest. And this is just to get drunk.
This is true.
And yeah, you better get drunk if you drink this. But I think what you should do if you're in Germany and you want to drink some good beer is I'm a big fan of wheat beer.
Okay.
And you can go to Bavaria and there are some smaller cities. So not necessarily Munich, but some smaller cities, and there are like hundreds of small breweries in these cities, and you can go there and just drink their own beer, and this is really delicious.
All right,
and it's also quite cheap. It's like 60 or 70% of what you usually pay in a pub or something like
so
this.
what you save on beer, you can use on a flight, go to Bavaria, which now Bavaria is the southern part of Germany, sort of around Munich. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's where the most wheat beers are brewed in Germany.
And then go on a little brewery tour. So that's great, because that means I don't have to go buy some here. I will wait until I go to Germany to try them. Perfect. The one that I remember best is Franziskaner. That was a beer that I saw quite often.
That's a good one. Yeah, if you're in a supermarket and have to decide on a beer, it's definitely a good choice.
All right, next up, this is a kind of a pivot off of that one. What is the funniest Oktoberfest story that you could tell on this podcast?
Oh, that's a good question.
Go ahead.
I've never been to Oktoberfest in Munich.
Okay.
But there's a smaller one, which is not as famous internationally, I guess, in Stuttgart.
Okay.
And that's only 2 hours from where I live, so we've been there several times. And which some funny story here.
I would imagine. So I've never seen this actually happen, but the crazy story I've heard is that there's this group of people that have a competition every year that basically they have to drink. So they carry around a mug at all times, and they have to drink whatever is put in it. So the last person standing wins some absurd amount of money. But in order to be the last person standing, you have to drink anything. So the people in the competition will go and like piss in a bottle and pour the pee in the bottle.
You hate to see it.
And they've got to drink it, like have to drink anything. So I don't know if that's true. I just heard it to be the case. And given my like distant memories of what it was like there, I think that's probably fair.
I mean, that's not far away from the truth, I think.
So Timo, you're getting a PhD in math. And like, there's always this like interesting thing about like you go home for holidays or something, or you're standing in an elevator, somebody asks you what you do for a living. How would you describe your sort of like your PhD topic to somebody cutting your hair?
Yeah, I mean, that's also a good question, because actually I have a hard time explaining it to my office colleague who also studied math.
Well, that's good. So this should be great then.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, what I could say is when I'm doing math, I live in a world where where 1 + 1 + 1 is not 3, but maybe 0. This is the world where I live in when I'm doing math.
Yeah, and currently people on the internet are living in a world where Mitch Trubisky's good. So, like that's why we brought you on, because you know how to live and create and work in alternative universes.
I was going to say run plus run plus run
sometimes
equals 0.
No, that's great. So yeah,
that's one of the things that, to be quite honest, I'm like most excited about, because you have a PhD in math and you apply some crazy stuff, some mathematical concepts that a lot of normal run-of-the-mill data scientists out there, quote unquote data scientists out there, won't implement. And Moo is going to come in, I'm sure, and do the exact same thing. So.
Well, and you're absolutely right, Timo. Like when I had an office, I shared an office as a grad student with like 6 other people, and it was strange because I was an applied mathematician. So every time we would walk to the coffee shop, I would bring a different book every time, that I was reading. And my friend brought he was in, I believe, algebraic geometry as well. And he brought literally the same book to Starbucks for 3 straight years. And so like the depth and I was more of a breadth guy. I learned a lot of different models and ways to prove theorems about them. And he learned one subject extremely deeply. And it was just, and he and I couldn't relate to much, in our research. He was very pure and I was very applied. So it's sort of interesting that, for you to say that, because my experience was similar.
So I like to call you Moo. My first question on this is: does it annoy you if I call you Moo? Is that a problem?
No, it's okay. Actually, I've gotten used to it. I actually even before I got on your team, I mean, I was some people mentioned me in their podcasts, and I listened to them, and I never realized that you would call me Moo, and then I started to realize, the Americans will call me Moo based on the writing of my name. But actually, in Germany, it's Mo.
Oh, I like Mo too. I'm a big nickname guy. So anything that's a good nickname, I'm all about. Is there a story? So I'm guessing then, I was excited to ask you what the story behind your nickname was, because Timo and Moo are not exact. Like it's not Timu. So I was curious what the origin of the nickname is. I guess it's simply that your name is Timo and it's pronounced Mo.
Yeah, that's just the last part of my name. My girlfriend, my then girlfriend, now wife, started calling me Mo, and all my friends caught this up and also started calling me like this, and
Nice. All right. Well, Mo it is.
Couldn't stop it.
Mo, spelled Moo, works for me. All right, let's move to football.
So why the Buccaneers? What was, because your picture originally was a Tampa Bay. When we started interacting on the internet, it was a Tampa Bay symbol, and it's always interesting when people didn't grow up in the state of the team that they're, or even the country of the team that they root for, how they ended up gravitating that way. What was your reason?
I was in my second season following the NFL, and I thought I need a team. And there were some teams I gravitated towards, and then I simply asked my girlfriend to buy me a team beanie for Christmas, and I gave her 3 choices, and it ended up being the Bucs, and so I am Bucs fan.
Wow, that is a rough way to.
Well, but what's really great about this though is, like, if you became a Steelers fan or a Patriots fan or like a Green Bay fan, everybody could accuse you of being on the bandwagon. But when Tampa Bay becomes good again, like, you're going to be like, well, I was there when they were bad, so you can really sort of play that up. So I think you're playing the long game well here.
Yeah, definitely. I can even say I started becoming a fan when they were bad, and then I waited for an eternity, and maybe they will be good at any time.
Well, Eric is very bullish on the Bucs this year, and I'm curious about 2 things. How much fun is it to root for Jameis Winston, and are you as bullish on the Bucs as Eric is?
I mean, I think his style of play is definitely fun to watch. Obviously, there are some off-field stuff that I'm not as excited about, but I can't change that. So,
I mean, look,
I'm also
Uber is a German word, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't exist in Germany. It's not allowed in Germany.
Interesting.
Well, that's because
that's uber weird.
The cab companies complained about it, and then it's not allowed in Germany.
So basically, like Vegas outlawed them for a while. Yeah. Still don't like them very much because of the cab companies. So what's their win total? 6.5?
Yeah.
You're going over, I assume?
Yeah, I think 7 wins is feasible.
Oh, a pragmatic fan who also happens to be a mathematician. You'd love to see that.
So what do you think, other than who's going to face Tampa Bay as the AFC component of the Super Bowl this season?
I mean, if the Bucs make the Super Bowl, I hope that they play against the Chiefs. I mean, they will probably get their ass beaten by Patrick Mahomes. But I think it could be a very interesting matchup. Lots of offense.
Well, they're going to have to get through the Bears first, of course.
Yeah.
We saw a particular book that had the Bears as the favorite now to come out of the NFC, and that was certainly something that triggered the 2 of us. But
I thought it was great.
Yeah, But yeah, that's a good matchup. I remember one of Jameis's good games in 2016. He actually did beat Kansas City in Arrowhead, so that he's done it before. So
I think this was the first game of the win streak where they almost made the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right. In 2016, they really did have a nice little run there, didn't they? And then I think it was just, they lost the Sunday night game in Dallas that maybe they should have won, and then that kind of turned the tide.
Football, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. Cameron Brate.
Yeah. Who's your favorite Bucs player?
It's Chris Godwin. I like Chris Godwin and O.J. Howard, so I like the 2017 draft class.
Some young guys. Do you own a Bucs jersey?
No.
Oh.
Only.
We've got to get a Mo Bucs jersey.
That's right.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. So obviously if anyone wants to know a little bit more about you, they should go follow you on Twitter. You've produced a ton of really good content on Twitter, which is one of the great things about Twitter. And unlike much of the content that's out there, yours has real math involved with it. So you have some opinions worth listening to about the inefficiencies in football. So what, in your mind, is the most easily curable inefficiency that happens in football today?
I think in danger of just repeating what Kevin told us last week, it's, I think, not trading up for non-quarterbacks. It just doesn't, at least in the, let's say, first 2 rounds, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And when you don't have to do anything for it, just stop it. It doesn't take anything. And the 4th down decisions. Go for it more often. It's also, it comes for free. You don't have to do anything. Just do it.
Both of those things are like free, right? It's like, just don't do anything stupid and you'll get some great.
It's really interesting though, because I like the answer that you gave, because it's not. So I think oftentimes people in the analytics community can get too one way. So it's either like take more risks is the answer to every question, but actually you gave a balanced one in the draft. Don't take risks. When don't be overconfident because you can't, but on the field, take risks on 4th down because the cards are in your favor. So I think a couple good answers there.
I like how you used his last name.
Oh,
there, take risks. The bigger issue is that people view them as big risks when they probably shouldn't be.
Right.
You should be a fan then of what the Saints did in this past draft, because really they were just a center away. And
actually tweeted like 1 month before the draft when Max Unger retired. I actually tweeted out that I would hope that they spend some 2020 draft capital on the 2019 centers, and actually they did it. So I was pleased.
Oh man, it's funny because I love Sean Payton. He's one of my favorite coaches, and his just doesn't give an F attitude about anything has certainly got to permeate into trading future draft capital for guys that he thinks are gonna put him over the top, such as Marcus Davenport. Very close, almost. We're gonna have you on the pod quite frequently to discuss German beers and other things of that ilk. So you'll hear more from Mo in the future. Timo, we appreciate you coming on. Go enjoy your dinner.
Appreciate you having me.
Your pasta and bread.
Yes.
See you, man.
Take care.
See you, guys.
All right, next up, we have got the Cleveland Browns. A lot of hype on the Browns this year. They went 7-8-1 last year. Obviously, the Hugh Jackson disaster. He gets canned. Freddie Kitchens comes in, rejuvenates the offense to a certain extent. Their over-under last year was 5.5. This year, of course, people are very excited about them. They've got a lot of money on them to win the whole darn thing. They're the favorite in their division. So let's actually start with this. Given how last year went and the additions that they've made, favorite?
To win the AFC North, I believe we would handicap them as favorites. Although, no, actually we don't. We still like Pittsburgh, which is different than the market. They are Vegas favorites currently.
Yep.
This is, to me, a classic sort of bounce off the ceiling type team. Mm-hmm. So you're going up. Ceilings, I think, a little lower than people believe, and oftentimes these teams, because expectations are such, they will bounce off the ceiling a little bit. Now, we didn't see that last year with the Rams.
True.
But we have seen it historically with teams, Minnesota being one of them. Like, these going from 0 wins to 7 is a lot easier than going from 7 wins to 10. And so I think Browns fans are going to maybe be a little bit disappointed in our, I would say, projection or outlook for this team.
I mean, they're one of those teams that has a lot of variance, obviously, right? And so it's impossible to know for sure how all of the pieces are going to come together. It's impossible to really say, well, Freddie Kitchens is a great coach. Because to me, a lot of what happened last year was just Hugh Jackson was terrible. Like, that offense was an absolute disaster. Yeah. Like, they didn't do any of the simple, smart things that you do, like running pass plays out of heavy sets.
Running play action.
Like all of these simple things that they just all of a sudden press that advantage. Play action. They had one of the highest drop rates before Jackson left. I think it was the second lowest after Kitchens started. A lot of things. Baker was fantastic, but a lot of those things were, he was great in unstable situations. He was phenomenal on the run. Amazing scrambling out of the pocket and throwing the ball. He was fantastic throwing into tight coverage, which, look, is great, but it's also going to rely on your receivers always making those plays. So I'm not quite. I think the funny thing with Baker is he could challenge for being the best, quarterback in the league this year. That's not, I think, crazy. But people might be a little frustrated because he put up such kind of gaudy touchdown interception numbers last year. And look, I think maybe a little bit of it is noise.
Yeah, and what we saw, Freddie Kitchens, when he took over, the Cleveland had a pretty simple schedule down the stretch, right? And, in the games where they faced playoff teams, they did not win, right? They did not beat Baltimore, although they covered. One of the games we picked them last year, I believe, we were 3-3 picking Browns games. They lost to Kansas City at home under Kitchens, right? They beat the brakes off of Cincinnati twice. They beat they beat Atlanta. Okay, that was a game that we had handicapped, but really they weren't facing a murderer's row. They weren't targeted at all, right? They struggled. For example, that Saturday night game over the Christmas weekend when they played Denver, and they really they did not get going really offensively. They were helped out a lot by Vance Joseph having the time of his life, sort of thing. So last season was extremely encouraging for them. But I think going from 7-8-1 to 10-6 is a lot harder than going from 0-16 to 7-8-1. One thing that's interesting, though, you look at their least valuable players, for example, Tyrod Taylor, Christian Kirksey, Derek Kennard, Tevin Coley, Desmond Harrison. Harrison released this week. Kindred was released as well. Tyrod Taylor now is the backup quarterback for the Chargers. So they have gotten rid of some of the players that didn't play for them last time. And they've been picking good players in the draft. Their most valuable players, Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, traded for, Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, Joe Schobert, all draft picks that they've had pretty high over the last few years. So they have been drafting, John Dorsey, drafting real football players now. They have done a pretty good job there, in the draft. So they have some young talent. It'll be interesting to see what they do if all these players end up good, which ones they choose to re-sign and which ones they allow to move on.
Well, if Ward can become that sort of shutdown corner, that's huge for them. They had really struggled in coverage prior to him getting there. He showed obviously great signs last year. The Greedy Williams pick is kind of interesting because he doesn't fit their scheme really at all. Was a great value where they got him at 46. A lot of people thought he could have been a top 10 pick. We thought he could have been a top 10 pick, certainly. So how they integrate him, if they do so correctly, and you end up with two really good cornerbacks on the outside, I mean, what a tremendous opportunity, right? You got Myles Garrett rushing the passer, and then you have two lockdown corners that make your coverage very strong. And then on the other side of the ball, you have Baker and Jarvis and Odell. So the potential for them to be strong at establishing the pass and stopping the pass is certainly there. But Pittsburgh is no slouch. I think people are drastically overrating how much Antonio Brown leaving is going to impact them, and probably overreacting to Bell like signing with the Jets, even though he didn't play with them last year. I'm sure that still has something to do with it. And then Baltimore, who, look, Lamar Jackson looked bad at the end of last year. To me, we really don't know what that offense is yet because he came in sort of just in the middle of the season. I want to see what happens when they design an offense, have time to actually implement it around the things that he does well.
Absolutely. And Cincinnati is a team that I think is going to be a little bit underrated in the marketplace. Their over-under is, a solid win less than where we have them. You look at the sort of how things happen in the NFL. Cincinnati was one of the worst teams in terms of coverage last season. Mm-hmm. Just by simple regression alone, but also the fact that their schedule gets a lot easier. They should be better there. They were a pretty good offense before Andy Dalton got hurt. They have 2 1,000-yard receivers, a pretty versatile running back, Tyler Eifert. They have a tight end. They have a collection of tight ends that could be good. Jonah Williams comes in, like sort of solidifies that left tackle position. So, sure. If you're looking at Cleveland and you're saying, okay, the trajectory is up, 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 up for Cleveland, you're making an implicit assumption that the trajectories for Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cincinnati are all going down. And I think that that's a little bit strong right now if you're looking to handicap the AFC North. So, again, this league is going to be a lot better when the Browns are good, right? We've been saying that for years, and I think they will be good. I don't necessarily know if they're a stone cold lock for any of these things.
Yes, I'm with you there. But it should be fun nonetheless. We get to see them on primetime a couple of times, so that'll be awesome. Let's talk more about Baker. You're wearing the shirt, so I think we should talk about this. There's been debates in this office over who you would rather have, Mahomes or Mayfield. Now, I presume the shirt you are wearing says your answer. Tell me your reasons.
I think so. For me, it's the coach quarterback combination is just simply has a longer track record, right? We don't know a ton about.
Sure, but I'm saying it's not. You don't get to take the coach with you.
Okay, but even then, would you say that playing for Andy Reid makes you a better quarterback fundamentally?
Sure, but that's really. You're saying, okay, he's played for Andy Reid for 2 years, started for 1, and therefore...
So then if he went to a different coach, I do think you would bring some of those things with him.
Like the beautifully designed offense?
Yeah, but the things that he, and I guess Donovan McNabb's not making my point for me very well, but, because he stunk in Washington and Minnesota. But okay, so independent of that, I still think Mahomes physically is a more gifted player. And I think production-wise, he was better than Mayfield last season. And you could, and I guess, again, this will be the tough test because I do think their supporting casts are closer now. In fact, even tipping to this, to the Browns scales quite a bit if Hill doesn't play. So we'll get to see a better look there. But Mahomes was good not only fundamentally, but also on the stat sheet, whereas Mayfield was very good, fundamentally, and then the stat sheet sort of caught up. I don't think it's just about taste. I do think that Mahomes is just slightly better.
Interesting. It's hard the tough thing is you can't really divorce Mahomes from what his opportunities were last year, right? He just had so many opportunities given that offense and given those players. On the other side of things, Mayfield overcame a incredibly suboptimal situation in both regards last year. So I know that if you put this poll up on Twitter, people, it'd be a joke. It'd be like everyone selecting Mahomes, you get laughed out of the box. Out of the box, what does that even mean? You get mocked for picking Mayfield. But I think there is an argument to be made for Mayfield. He's played 1 season, very suboptimal situation, and was well above average.
Yep.
So if I'm saying who's a guy that, regardless of the situation, that's kind of what you always think of with tier 1 guys. Regardless of who's around them, think about Tom Brady. This guy is there's a floor here that is good. It's not just average, it is good. He will make this team good. That is what I see with Mayfield. Not saying I don't see it with Mahomes, but there's just he hasn't had to deal with that situation. So to me, this year is the one that will tell us more about being able to make this decision, because there were still things that Mayfield did that, weren't particularly great. He was 10th from a clean pocket last year. 12th under pressure. So some unstable things that really did help him out there. If you look at his accuracy, for example, 5th in accuracy into tight windows, which that's fantastic, but is also an unstable thing.
It's good that you're capable of doing that, but let's not, project that as the norm.
Overly excited. Had an over 8% turnover-worthy play rate on second or third or fourth reads, which is almost double what the NFL rate is.
Yep.
Those are things that traditionally just you hate to see it, really. Was tremendous throwing over the middle of the field, but had some struggles making some poor throws outside of the numbers. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't take Mahomes right now, because I think, gun to my head, I would. But I think it's very close. And after this season, I think there's a pretty darn good chance that Mayfield is the answer.
What's nice, though, is that Mayfield, I believe, is older than Mahomes. So they have the same number of years as a starter. So we really are seeing sort of like them at the same initial condition to some degree. Although
no.
Well, I mean, from a process standpoint,
Mahomes had an entire season of learning from Andy Reid, and then got to start with a fresh slate.
I'm talking about from a
continuity.
process standpoint. Like, you and my opinion of him is not like, oh, one's the MVP and one's just a dude, right? Like, we both view him as, if there are 8 quarterbacks in the NFL that are worthy of that second big contract, we believe those 2 are in that 8. And like, whether you shuffle, like, the rankings of any of those 8 quarterbacks is sort of like about taste, to my opinion. The thing that I'll counter with on behalf of Mahomes is that he was an MVP candidate from probably the first quarter of the season on. When you watch some of those games, like for example against Baltimore, like,
it's amazing.
You got every defense's best. The game against New England, they go scoreless in the first, or they had maybe 1 touchdown in the first half, and then he just puts up 30 in the second. Like, there's some, and Mayfield gets all of these points for having moxie, for being a great leader and all that stuff, and he deserves most if not all of them. I think Mahomes is underrated in that aspect of play.
Sure, and I don't disagree with you. However, having Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and Andy Reid
and Damian Williams
is an amazing
Look,
supporting
now Mayfield
cast
has Kareem Hunt. We'll be able to properly compare them.
I mean, Jarvis Landry was legitimately by far the best receiver that they had, and was fantastic, but like
dropping 95-yard touchdowns to the Ravens, but
you can only do so much, when that's your number one guy. Tyreek Hill creating 8 yards of separation downfield is a nice thing to have. So it's a little bit of both, in my opinion. They're going 1-2 though. If you're drafting for the future, no doubt about it, right?
Those are the 2 that I'm considering. A distant third, but I think somebody who's legitimately on that borderline in the conversation is Watson. I think
Oh wow.
After having watched Houston games back a little bit, that I wonder if Mayfield or Mahomes had that type of infrastructure at the offensive line / Bill O'Brien's okay as a play caller, but like, how would they have performed? I think Watson performed at least very admirably in those situations. Not an MVP, not a whatever.
I love Deshaun Watson. I will be very interested to see what this same question, the answers to it after this season, because you could see Kyler Murray getting up there. Curious how Darnold plays. And then there's guys like, look, if I'm drafting right now, does having a 6-year run, 7-year run make it worth it? In which case, am I taking Russell Wilson or Andrew Luck? I think those are considerations as well. If you were to put a number scale, your confidence that Mahomes is the right decision over Mayfield right now, what is it?
62.5.
Nice. It's very close for me. I'm going to go 51. I think it is really, really close. I love Mahomes. So much of what he did was on the right side of variance, including the continuity of his supporting cast. All things being equal, I just don't know. So I'm very undecided.
This gets us back to the Trubisky comment, though. So when you get the right side of variance all the time, the thing to do is to throw 50 touchdowns and win the MVP.
Right.
Not to throw 24 touchdowns, 12 picks, and lose a playoff game 16-15 to the Eagles.
We are in lockstep here. I mean, Mahomes was absolutely, utterly amazing. And we have talked about the amazing things that he did. He avoided negatively graded plays as well as Breeze did last year. It's not as if Mahomes does not do the stable things that you expect him to do. It is just simply, Andy Reid creates those situations better than anyone else. We'll see if our boy Freddie Kitchens, I mean, look, they doubled their yards per play on screen passes after Hugh Jackson left. Whether that was Freddie Kitchens being amazing or Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley being,
they were
less than amazing.
19th in EPA per pass play. If you look at the whole season, they were 4th after Kitchens took over. So, again, take it with a grain of salt given the defenses they played, but it was still non-trivial.
Since week 9 last season, NFL leaders in yards per pass, Mahomes, 9, Baker Mayfield, 9.2. So, I mean, those two guys were absolutely incredible. This is a fun debate. I look forward to having it multiple times over the course of the next couple of years. We'll be watching Trubisky, Brady this week. We hope you guys join along with us. For more, of course, head to profootballfocus.com and hit us up on Twitter if you have any kind comments to pass our way. See you guys.